Right, I'm opening the meeting at 6:30. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting, special meeting of Burnside Council on the 21st of December 2021, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. Finally, we seek understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. In the case of an emergency, an alarm will sound and then please follow directions of staff. I remind you that all council meetings are live streamed through the council's website and a copy of the agenda is available by downloading from this website. Members, please raise your hand to indicate you wish to speak and use your microphones when speaking and remember to turn them off when you finish speaking. Please turn off your mobile phones or put them on silent during the meeting so they don't disturb the speakers. And a reminder, of course, of 3-minute speaking time and 2 questions. To everyone present in the chamber and in the foyer, please be respectful of each other and their opinions during these debates and not interrupt the person debating or talk while they are speaking. It's important that all views of the elected members are heard before decisions are made. Masks may be removed whilst you are speaking. And I think that has covered it. Right, absences. We have no apologies. We have no leave of absence. I seek if there's anyone who has a declaration of interest to be stated now. No declarations. Right, so then we will move to the business of this special meeting. 2 items, 8.1 and 8.2. I seek someone to withdraw 8.1. Councillor Davey. And 8.2 actually belongs to Councillor Carbone who put the motion. Right, so we will start with Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternate recommendation, an alternate motion, and that reads that Council approves the following locations for the pump track between February 22 and January 2023 in the following order but with exact things to be determined. 1, Kensington Gardens Reserve Courts, Quandong Avenue. Delete Mellow Reserve Courts. Make Langman Recreation Court number 2 and 3 Belliet Reserve Courts, and then add another paragraph that Council removes Mellow Reserve Courts from the list for selection as a pump track location. Thank you. So we've heard all of the concerns raised by many of the community around Mellow Reserve by the residents who live, work and recreate here in a densely populated area and whose small park is heavily utilised as well as being located between 2 very busy streets, Howard Street and Brand Street. Their concerns relate primarily for not wanting to have the pump track located there, primarily to the loss for 3 to 4 months of their two community tennis courts, as well as the compromised ability to use the rest of the open space in the reserve for the range of passive activities that they undertake there. So that's playground use, huge use of the barbecue, picnics, other family facilities, the local gym, a childcare centre and gym adjacent to the park use that as well for a lot of their activities. There are also concerns, as we heard, raised about the considerable traffic issues with high rates of cut-through traffic flowing through these streets, exacerbated by the local dislocation associated with the huge intersection upgrade at McGill and Portrush Roads nearby. There are also considerable parking issues associated with residences, small size of their blocks and driveways, the adjacent business on McGill Road whose clients use the back streets as a convenient parking area, and the increasing use of park and rides in the area. However, as we heard, their major concern is that the criteria used to determine the location of the pump track is inadequate and outdated. And I support this. It's about 5 years old now and does not recognise these issues, the significant traffic, parking and residential amenity issues, nor the changed suburban domestic and work patterns which are eventuating from the pandemic. What is most significant, though, is that no one in that community who lives, works and recreates has been consulted about this proposal, other than for an information day 2.5 years ago. They have not been presented with a proposal justifying the location of the pump track in this site, and they haven't been given any data which gives an accurate picture of the use of the tennis courts, the booking systems. There's no acknowledgement that it's a community shared use area. There's no recent data or metrics on traffic increases and volumes or the vehicle speeds around the reserve. There has been no community engagement. They've only become aware when the reserve is nominated to host the pump track in council papers. So the community engagement policy has not been enacted.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. You had your 5 minutes. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Worship. I think after we've heard everything...
Just a minute. Can you turn your microphone off, please, Councillor?
Thank you, Worship. Happy to second this motion. And I think we've just heard everything that's wrong about a pump track over the last 3 minutes. I think it's timely to remind the chamber about everything that is right about the pump track, and especially when it comes to moving ahead next year. I can't think of a single council initiative that we have done that has had such massive uptake in the last 3 years. We've put on all sorts of initiatives over the last 3 years.
Are you seconding this?
I am seconding it, yeah. 3 out of 4 is good enough, Your Worship. So I can't think of a single initiative where we have done which has seen the uplift that it's seen. We have seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children take part in our pump track program. We've seen hundreds of mothers, fathers, grandparents and so forth come along and enjoy the community atmosphere that the pump track brings. We talk about, in this chamber, we talk about reducing childhood obesity. We talk about doing things to get children off their phones and off the couches. Okay?
Point of order.
You need to refer to what it is specifically.
Well, I don't remember us actually talking about child obesity, to be honest. I think it's an error in fact, misleading the chamber. I don't have the legislation. If that takes me out, so be it.
I've been told that I need to seek it each time.
There are countless strategies. There are countless strategies that this council...
You can't continue until we get the point of order sorted.
I'm happy to withdraw that particular motion, that wording, Your Worship, if it helps expedite things.
I think in future, if you've got to call a point of order, then you need to refer to what specific aspect of that point of order you're referring to.
I'll rephrase, Your Worship. In the media and in the community, there has been discussion around childhood obesity. There has been discussion around what we can do to get children off the couches and off their screens and so forth. And it's these sorts of initiatives that give meat to those discussions. it's well and good to have these bold agendas and bold strategies, but we need action to follow through. And these are the sorts of things that will really have a deep, deep impact and really give all those discussions that we've talked about real energy and real bounce. The pump track has been popular because it is for children. I believe it is a particular service that is lacking in this area, and it has been absolutely fun, and it's been an absolute novelty. Now, I know there's been discussion around complaints and so forth, but all I can suggest is that we look back at what we've been presented with at this council, and that is over the last year, despite all the hundreds and thousands of people that have taken part in this initiative, the complaints have been very, very minimal. In my ward, there has been a pump track installed, and in that time, I've received 2 complaints compared to the hundreds of children that have taken part. And it's worth mentioning that one of those complaints came by before the pump track was installed. So since it's been installed, we've received 1 complaint. So I think if there's anything to learn from all this, children love it, it's deeply needed in this council, and once it's actually installed and once it's actually up and running, the complaints have been absolutely minimal. Bring it on next year.
And, right, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Councillor Davis?
This council is known for its successful projects. We've had the Burnside pool, we've looked at moving Strength for Life, we're looking at upgrading the cricket and rugby club in Kinsey Gardens Reserve. We also have the Glenunga tennis courts and the Glenunga hub. We do a lot for our community. So I think a lot of the comments of the last speaker that we do nothing and nothing has been more successful is just completely untrue. This council, I think, has proceeded very well over the last few years in terms of the offering that we provide to our residents. But in my view, what we're looking at here is something completely different and a complete change to certain parts of our areas. Now, I'm speaking against this motion on the basis that Kinsey Gardens Reserve has been included. And I would vote for a motion which would include Penfold Park or even the Civic Centre, because I believe that we should start to put that back onto a loop and start to fix those areas and bring it back. Now, I have spoken with my community regarding Kinsey Gardens Reserve, and we've spoken at length about Kinsey Gardens Reserve here when we conducted the master plan and also at other times when we talked about the park run. Kinsey Gardens Reserve is suffering. It is completely overrun in many ways. And not only that, is that we're looking to expand 2 major aspects of it. I also know that from what I've heard from the residents as well, and I'm sure many of you have seen those emails, the parking in that area is becoming increasingly congested. I've also spoken with those who actually use those tennis courts and residents about those who use those tennis courts on a regular basis. And the residents, when you actually read their emails and you pay attention to them and you listen to them, you will understand how often they are used in Kinsey Gardens Reserve. Those West Terrace tennis courts, whilst they might not be booked and the administration doesn't have that data, are used all the time. The courts on the other side of West Terrace are also booked out and charged for, and we earn income for most times throughout the year. Now, I'm going to vote against this motion on the basis that includes Kinsey Gardens Reserve because it's not a suitable location for the pump track. And I believe that we should start to put it back onto a rotating basis. And so I would suggest we include Penfold Park and we include the Civic Centre as alternatives to give us that 12-month rotation.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Piggott, then Councillor Hensch.
I can't support it either. Again, Kinsey Gardens Reserve. Look, I think a practical issue we have here at the moment is and I don't disagree actually when you stuck to the facts that Councillor Carbone spoke about this being very positive. It has been very positive, and we do need to keep doing it. There's no question about it. The problem with Kensington Gardens Reserve, on top of what Henry was saying, and the same with Mellor actually, is that it gets tied up with the skate park, the wheel park debate. Right now, it'll be a tinderbox really to put it in either Kensington Gardens Reserve or Mellor Reserve, because it will be seen as a stalking horse for the wheel park, which until we actually sort out where that's going, I feel that is always going to be a problem. Those two parks were both in the top 4 initially in 2019 that went out to consultation. And I think for that reason, if no other, we don't need until we've actually resolved. If we resolve tonight that it goes forward with the second motion, that may be different. But at the moment, although I don't think it will be different, we'll have a lot of residents that will be really quite upset around this whole debate. And if we drop a pump track, albeit it is actually a pretty positive experience on my observation from where we've put it, that is going to be seen as a further act of war, actually, quite aside from this Christmas week meeting, in regard to pushing it into Kinsey Gardens Reserve. And the stuff I've read on Mellor Reserve, again, I feel a misunderstanding around the whole thing, and the pump track is actually seen as the mini, and to be fair, that's what we presented it as when we first bought the damn thing. It will be seen as, well, it's the pump track today, temporary, small children, you know, lovely, 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 but it's the forerunner for the wheel park that they all fear. And so I think for both Mellor and Kensington Gardens Reserve, we just can't do it now. We do need to choose 2 others. I'm all for having it continue. 2 others, Councillor Davis suggested 2, but it can't include Kensington Gardens Reserve, I don't believe, and Mellor Reserve either at this point.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here today and I don't have confidence at the moment why we are here with residents who should be preparing their Christmas meals for the rest of the week. We shouldn't be here again next year doing the same thing. I agree with Councillor Piggott. The intent of this was a trial, the pump track trial, to see how popular it would be. It would underpin the business case for a permanent skate park. We have done the trial. Then in April, there's a motion. Council carried a motion and it says, part of it says that now it's not a pump track trial anymore, it's actually called a transportable community facility. So, what have we got? A portable community facility. In this paper from the administration, it quite clearly says this transportable community facility is not designed to be a transportable community facility because it will fall apart. It's the only one in Australia that gets moved around and unbolted constantly, right? So it's actually not designed for it. It's not proven technology to transport this thing around all the time. And we know in the papers it costs us operation costs. It means our people have to now stop looking after the trees, verges, etc., and start unbolting this thing and moving it around the place and then upsetting residents because suddenly it will be in your park next door. I oppose this use of this pump track trial being morphed into now a transportable community facility until the people tell us they want such a service from this council. Perhaps it's, when I think about it, Councillor Piggott, it's a bit like the Royal Show. Okay, what will we have next? I ask myself. Perhaps we could put it in some spare grounds in the. Although we have Adelaide City Council very keen to have it in the Victoria Park for the bicycle event. And right next door to Victoria Park is a swathe of land that belongs to the council, so it wouldn't be too hard to move it into the car park there. Okay, I won't support this motion. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Turnbull.
Yes, I won't support the motion either as it is, because I think that there needs to be shared around. The pump track should go into Mellor Reserve. I think the residents would be quite acceptable when they saw how well it's used, how the kids behave themselves. I'd confidently say that the residents' fears would be allayed. There are 400 plus children who live near that reserve, and they have the right to be able to easily access it too. I noticed that 2 of the others are in Burnside ward, Langman Recreation Reserve Court. It's been there before. This is its second time around, and Belliet. We didn't mobilise our forces against it because our residents believe 3 months is okay. That's all right, it's just a temporary pump track. Let the kids come, see how it goes. See, Belliet has some problems too because it's a lease with St Peter's Girls' School. and also netball, winter netball, so have to be fitted in. But I don't see the residents complaining. I think we should share it round, and I think that Mela should be in it, and I think Kensington Garden Reserve should be in it too. Let's see how that goes. It's not a permanent concrete structure, and it would complement the beautiful playground that's there as well. So I certainly won't vote this one, but I'd vote for the recommendation that we started off with. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jones?
Look, I have to laugh because Councillor Davies says there's been no consultation about Mela Reserve, but she's proposed a motion to put it in 3 other locations where there hasn't been any consultation either. So are you in favour of consultation or not? I could live with the first bit of this motion. I'd like to see it in Mela Reserve like Councillor Turnbull as well, because I think it's been fantastic. I think it's the best trial we've ever done. It's been successful in 7 locations, but I absolutely refuse to rule out Mela Reserve from having a pump track forever. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to vote against it, and I will prefigure that I will move the officer's recommendation if this is defeated.
Let's see if there's anyone else who wishes to speak. Councillor Hughes?
I'll have to speak very quickly. Look, I have been to this pump track. I think 4 of the 7 locations. My children, I think, have been to 6 of the 7 locations. And this is something that brings the community together. And I appreciate all of the fears that we've heard from a number of residents. But a lot of those objections related to a skate park, and that's actually not what this is. And I don't always agree with Councillor Turnbull, but the intent of this was that it is to share the facility around. And there are young children in Beulah Park. Doesn't sound like many of them live adjacent to the park. There's been a number of concerns around parking, and my understanding from the way that I've personally used this facility is quite often our family will get on our bikes or we'll get on our scooters as a local resident, and we would scoot to that. So when it was in Newland Park, we walked from Hazelwood Park. When it was in Langman, we also walked from Hazelwood Park, and a number of other families do that as well. Now, in terms of the parking or the traffic concerns that were raised, now the staff have sent through some information, and my understanding is that there's regular-ish surveys of traffic that have been undertaken over the last 4 years, and I think one of the things that I would recommend if the original motion gets up is that, you know, staff did actually monitor traffic as part of that trial so that we could see whether there were actually real concerns around additional people coming and driving to this facility. I think there are a number of concerns that have been raised, but I think we've seen from locating this at various locations around the city that it doesn't actually attract delinquent behaviour. I think we've alleviated that concern over the last, 2 years. Now, Councillor Davey mentioned that the criteria is inadequate. It's the same criteria that we've selected the other 3 sites on. So I think, you know, I might be sworn at as I walk out to my car, because I know there are a lot of people that live in my ward that are here this evening. But what I will say is that this is a community park. What we're proposing has been really successful over the last 2 years in encouraging people to get out of their house, and I think it would be a real shame that Beulah Park, living on the edge of the city, those residents miss out on the opportunity to have this facility. I think the options that were proposed by the staff is a really great mix of locations. It gives everyone in the city an opportunity. So I would be happy to support the officer's recommendation in this case.
Councillor Dawes?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So far we've had 7 locations for a pump track, and it's been proposed by administration 4 more, making 11. And of those 11, 4 have been or will be in our ward. Yes, we did receive a couple of concerns from residents, and their concerns were quickly resolved by the council administration. 99%, I would say, accepted that it would be a temporary location for 3 months. Both people who had no children and those who were worried about a long-term solution. And many enjoy watching their grandchildren and children use it. Now, there is a fear what it could bring at Mellor Reserve. We've all read those emails. There have been so many of recent days. But no longer is it the fear of the unknown, because from the feedback from the 7 locations that we have used so far, we don't have that fear. Initially, people were worried what it could be. So to the Mellor Park residents nearby, all I ask is to give it a go. That's all I ask. Now, if there are any unresolvable problems, I'll be the first to apologise to the residents and I'll back its removal. But I just can't see that happening based on the evidence to date. If it is a success, I'll be so happy. And can I just add that Mellor Park will never be a venue for a permanent skate park or wheel park. It's just too small. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If there's no one else who wishes to speak, then I shall go back to the mover, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Yes, there has been a lot of division and confusion about this matter. And yes, there have been some successful locations that have given lots of pleasure to the community. My concern, and the concern that has been raised by the residents around Mellor Reserve, is that their situation is different, and they are very concerned that there has been no community information and engagement, and they are only becoming aware once papers come to council and they incidentally hear about their reserve being listed as a host for the pump track. And, as we heard from the deputations, that they will lose their tennis courts that are highly used by the community. The Burnside Community Engagement Policy is pretty specific in that it's in place and there to inform, involve and consult the community on decision-making of council. And also, it states that Burnside is committed to effective, ongoing and timely community engagement as a critical part of local governance and key decision-making. I cite at paragraph 5.3, council staff will be proactive in informing and seeking the views of its community, and this has not been done in relation to the proposed change of use of the community tennis courts in Mellor Reserve. There are specific issues associated with the reserve that we have had outlined to us. I'm told at length that there was no need for consultation because the change is only temporary. But 3 to 4 months change of use of a significant community asset is not insignificant, and I believe that we would be doing a lot better if we had reassured the community and involved them and engaged them. I ask you to support permanent removal of Mellor Reserve tennis courts as a site for hosting the pump track due to its location and proximity to the many small homes, the densely populated area, the traffic and parking issues, and its heavy use, existing use. And I think that council, the point has already been made, I think that council does need to review the criteria for selecting pump track locations to include community engagement and consultation before decisions are made for recommendation to council. I think that's part of our governance duty. And further, this is not a NIMBY issue. One of the residents was really quite upset when he overheard a councillor saying, oh, this is just a NIMBY, not in my backyard. It is, I believe, a failure by us to implement our community engagement policy in relation to a change of use of a community park. Therefore, we should be listening to the locals and not ridiculing them. So I hope you'll support this. Thank you.
Right, I put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Division's been called. One person in favour, and that is Councillor Davey. Councillor Henschke, Councillor Cornish, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Piggott, Councillor Davis, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Dawes, Councillor Jones, Councillor Hubel against. the motion was lost. Now, can you adjudicate this? I saw two, but there was also another one over there. Sorry? Yeah, I think I saw Councillor Davis. But it was, like I looked and saw both hands up, so that's why I was seeking someone else. Councillor Davis.
Yeah. Can I just have the officer's recommendation up and then I'll tweak it. Can you remove Kinsey and Gardens Reserve, remove Mellor Reserve and replace with Burnside Civic Centre and Penfold Park?
Is that the order you wish to place them in?
No,
Because-
they determine the order.
No, it was actually predetermined in the list before.
No, it says but with exact.
Oh, in the following order? If you want it in that order, that's the way the order goes. That's what the motion states.
Just get rid of in the following order. I think the administration's better placed to, yeah. Yep. Okay. Look, I think, look, you've got ward councillors who are saying that their community is telling them that they want to continue to use the current facility that's there. This decision is about future locations for a pump track, because I understand from the administration that it will be packed up and that will be the end of it. When you've got ward, like on here are 4 possible locations that I think everyone can get behind. No one's sitting there going, this is a write-off, this is outrageous. And in my view, if we can get these 4 across the line, then the pump track continues. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do. So is it about you trying to force against and taking away a facility for certain residents on the basis that you have something to prove to them as a council? Right? You've had deputations come from residents, and they've said, particularly in Mellor Reserve, we use this space on a regular basis, it's heavily used, please don't take away our tennis court because it's highly useful to us. That's what they're saying, is they're saying, we want to continue to use this tennis court. Same thing with Kinsey and Gardens Reserve. That tennis court on West Terrace is used, all right, particularly as the works in the southeastern corner are underway in Kinsey Gardens Reserve. Now, can you ask yourself, is this really so egregious that you can't support it? At the end of the day, it's been to this Burnside Civic Centre, and I think that was a great success. It's been to Penfold Park, and there haven't been that many complaints. So these 4 names here, and in my view, are good places to put it. And at the end of the day, if you support a pump track, then support those 4 locations. Do you really need to force a pump track down the throats of residents who are saying, please don't put it here? Is that really what we need to do? To prove your own point, that you're a NIMBY, or that you're saying you're against this because of this. If you're saying that they're NIMBY residents and they're just trying to get rid of it for the sake of it, then you haven't listened to them. What they're telling you is, don't take away my current facility, not, I hate a pump track. Everyone understands that this is for 12-year-old kids, all right? There haven't been that many complaints. But what they're asking you to do is not take away their current facilities. I think this is a balanced view. I think this meets our needs for tonight. I hope that you can support it.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Hubel, do you wish to speak now? Or is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Turnbull.
With due respect, I think all of our residents could say the same. Please don't take away our tennis courts because they're so heavily used. So I still think we need to share it round more equitably than we have been. and use what was proposed initially by the officer's recommendation, well researched, well thought out, and go back to that. We can all say that. All residents can say it. And they have, and they do. But some say it more loudly with more emails than others. And they get more say by the sound of it. It's a sway thing. They're persuading through perpetual emails, perpetual emails that they are right. We could all galvanise people who could say the same thing. So let's share it round as many wards as possible. Let's make it equitable. Thank you.
Councillor Cornish and then Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. I completely and utterly agree with Councillor Turnbull. Morally, I'm all for equity, and everyone should have a chance to locally walk down and use this piece of play equipment that gets transported around the city at different locations for a school term, basically. However, I'm going to vote for this motion because this pump track has got a limited life cycle. We know it's going to fall apart at some point, and I don't think we'll probably buy another one. And I want my residents in my ward to have a second go in the Civic Centre car park. So I'm happy for it, and unfortunately the people at the northern part of the city of Burnside are probably going to miss out. But I will vote for this motion, even though it's not equitable. Morally, I've got an issue with it. But we've got a lot of feedback from residents of Beulah Park that do not want this facility for their children in the area. You know, they've spoken. So it was quite highly used for the residents in the Turak Gardens and Rose Park ward, and I would certainly like to see it available and closer to them for a change. So I'll support this motion.
Councillor Lemon.
I have a question, if I may, of administration.
Yes, certainly.
What's the estimation that this will still be this pump track is viable? What's the time frame on it? How many years have we got left?
Through your worship, it's when we originally purchased it, we estimated the life cycle to be up to 10 years. As we mentioned in the report, the more you do move it, obviously it does have an effect on the condition of it itself. There's been no major concerns with the condition of it thus far. However, after 2 years, we're actually getting it professionally assessed in January next year. So we'll have a much better idea of the long-term assessment or life of the asset following that. But we're estimating between 5 and 10 years.
Councillor Henschke.
I have a question for the administration, please. Which of these reserves, please, has 2 tennis court sizes?
Councillor Lemon, could you turn your microphone off, please?
Yeah, the question for the administration is, out of these parks, Penfold, Langham and Belliet, is it a 2 tennis courts will be used?
Through your worship, number 2, 3 and 4 have 2 tennis courts. We would have to determine the configuration once we look at each of those reserves, but yeah, they both have 2 tennis courts.
I'll speak to the motion. Thank you. For the full configuration of a pump track, we do... Can I speak?
There's no reason why. She's only asked a question and then she speaks. It's a different motion. It's correct, isn't it? Sorry? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to clarify from the administration I know that Councillor Davis hasn't specified the correct order, but would this potential number of 4 work, knowing that we're constrained with Belliet Courts and potentially Civic Centre around events and timing?
Through worship, yeah, it will work. We'll just have to play about with the order a little bit, but yeah, those 4 could work.
Thank you. Yeah, so I asked that question because for the full configuration of the pump track, we do need 2 tennis court sizes. The location at the Burnside Civic Centre would probably enable that, which would be good. And the Burnside Civic Centre car park would help with parking for people. And further, there's a value add there at Burnside because of the Civic Centre, where children and families can then use the Civic Centre facilities, the library. Could be a great holiday fun program combined with this at the Civic Centre. And it did, as Councillor Davis say, have some amazing results in the trial. Further, it's the only site which has a resident proximity of nearly 60 metres away, depending on where we put it in the council car park, I guess. So that's a good thing too, out of all of those locations.
Councillor Jones. Yes, sir.
Through your worship, just one clarification. When it was at the Burnside Civic Centre last time, it wasn't to the full size of the pump track. It was slightly smaller. So if it goes to the same location, which I imagine it would be slightly smaller than the maximum size.
Right, Councillor Jones.
We had a workshop on Skatepark Locations a few weeks ago, and the administration came up with 8 top locations, which did not include the Civic Centre. Can you tell me why that was?
Just to, through your worship, to get our terminology absolutely correct, are you talking about the pump track location or the wheel park? Pump track? Because you said skate park, sorry. Yeah, so.
I'm as guilty as the rest of us.
We removed the Civic Centre just for one particular, well, 2 reasons. It wasn't as popular as the other locations during the initial trial. It was used less than the others. And there was a perceived disruption at the time, and I say perceived, that it did impact on car parking at the site, and we received quite a number of complaints. I say perceived because in reality there was actually only 1 loss of public car park at the time. However, because during that workshop we identified, I think it was 11 in total, potential locations, we believe that was sufficient for a rotational trial, but the Civic Centre can certainly be used if council wishes to do so.
Councillor Lemon, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, thank you. I will speak. I must agree with Councillor Turnbull on this. I too have received lots of emails from residents living around Mellor Reserve and close by, and read all of them, and have come to the conclusion that there's been misapprehension about what this portable track is about. Now, notwithstanding Councillor Pickett's comment about it stalking the potential for a skate park, which I thought was very insightful, and may well cause some of these issues from a number of residents. I think that this is, as Councillor Cornish said, something that's going to be there for just under a school term. It is 12 weeks. It's long service leave. It's no time at all. And I think, as Councillor Turnbull said, it should be shared around the city. We're not going to have this facility, this fun facility for small children for a long time. But wherever it's gone, there has been apprehension, sometimes complaints, but never, thank God and good riddance. People get used to it and they realise it's temporary. I went and had a look at the statistics that were sent to us last week on Burnside's demographic, and the residents in the Beulah Park area, according to our report here, there's 22% of children, are children in that area. That is greater than anywhere else in Burnside, where it sits around 20% or just under. And I think having a facility for a short amount of time to put into a park on a temporary basis so that those local young people can walk there or ride there or take their children, make their parents take them there, is a good thing. And there's a likelihood that it won't go back there for another 2 years, maybe 3, maybe 5. I won't support this for taking it out. I do think it needs to be shared around.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Turnbull, you wish to ask a question?
Just a question, please. Burnside Civic Centre, just where did all those cars park when it was there for the first time? Because it's always full up of employees' cars. Did they park on the streets or where did they go?
Through your worship, when I responded to the question, I said loss of one public car park, and that's because we reduced the number of staff car parks that were available at the time. And also we encouraged staff to take other modes of transport or carpool, and managers' car parks also parked across the road at the parking, what's the other side of Greenhill Road. So there was only one loss of public car park at that time to accommodate.
Councillor Piggott, you have next.
Yeah, listening to the debate, look, it's. I think Councillor Davis is right. I think it's it might be, it might not be. I'm not sure equitable is actually the right thing here. That it's not equitable necessarily. I think equitable is quite tough on all fronts. I think it's practical though to actually go with this path. I think the issues around Mellow are not based in fact. I think probably if they got it, they'd probably have a good time with it. But it is real at the moment. They are mixing it up with the skate park, the wheel park debate. Councillor Jones did it just now. So it shows it's highly possible and perhaps even probable. So it's a timing thing. I do feel if we've moved the wheel park debate on and resolved that, then it would be a very different issue to put into Mellow Reserve. And I think that's true of Kensington Gardens Reserve as well, except with Kensington Gardens Reserve, currently the number one runner in people's views in regard to the bigger debate. I think tonight deciding to put it in Kensington Gardens Reserve would actually be quite debilitating perhaps to the debate. It would actually raise the heat even further, and we probably don't need to do that beyond what it already is. So I think it's a practical decision. I think Mr. Cant, I didn't, loss of one public car park is an excellent result. I know you would have turned yourself inside out a bit and copped a bit of flack for doing that, but full credit to you. And that sounds doable. Penfold Park, Henry and I did a meeting at Penfold Park before when this all came up, before the pump track, and they brought their spears and swords and all sorts of stuff. But the pump track did go there, and it wasn't the disaster they felt. So I don't think it's an issue around whether it's good or bad a pump track. I mean, the pump track has proven itself. But in practical terms, I think leaving those two out of the fore at the moment is just a sensible thing to do as a council while we resolve the bigger issue of the wheel park.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to support this motion. I think in practical terms, as has been articulated, there have been no complaints that I'm aware of from any of the Langman Reserve or Penfold Park Reserve. We're told that they accepted the pump track facility there. The Burnside Civic Centre was a success, the location there, and it's central, fair, equitable access, and I agree the staff did a fantastic job locating it so that it was not intrusive, as minimally intrusive to the demands of the area. And in regard to Belliet Reserves, I take on board Councillor Turnbull's comments, but there has been some community engagement and negotiation with the lessee who mainly owns or has access to the courts, which is St Peter's Girls, and there has been a negotiation to locate the track there in that space when they're not being used. So I think in practical terms this is a good outcome, and I hope people support it. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I was going to speak, but I'd just like to ask for clarification in terms of, was it consultation with St Peter's Girls, or was it simply just they don't lease the courts over the school holidays, so that would be available for us to use?
Through your worship, the first time we considered all viable locations, Belyet was not included in that because they have a year-round lease over those courts. Following or leading into the workshop, can't remember exactly where it happened, we discussed the matter directly with the school to see if there was any time that would be suitable to get a 3-month window that they wouldn't access, and we were able to determine that that's correct. Between November and I think January or February, it's available for us to use. So we confirmed with the school rather than consulted.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I'll allow Councillor Hughes to speak. No one? Right, Councillor Hughes?
Sorry, I was just going to ask one more question. Speaking from my personal experience, when I rather badly skated at the Burnside Civic Centre, the surface is not as good. And I'm just wondering, given we have to make the track smaller and that we now have purchased an additional straight strip of track, would that site accommodate the straight strip as well as the circular strip?
That's through your worship, that's a difficult question to answer on the fly. I would need to work with the team to determine whether or not we could ideally fit the straight track in as well. And that's something that I would have to take on notice, I'm afraid. I wouldn't be able to answer it definitely here and now.
Can I follow up with a subsequent question? If that was the case, would you then bring back to council? I'm just thinking that maybe while it's at the Civic Centre, there's an option to have that small piece sitting in another park. I just don't want it to be wasted, given that we've invested a significant amount of money in that.
Through your worship, that's a fair point. We would certainly look to maximise the pieces of equipment. If we can use it on site, absolutely. If not, we would look to use it elsewhere and could certainly bring that back.
Can I ask the mover and seconder if they would accept a variation to remove the Civic Centre and leave the other 3, which I don't think substantially changes the motion.
Through the Mayor, the mover of the motion actually is the only person that can raise a variation, so that would be an alternate motion.
Sorry. When it was last at the Burnside Civic Centre, and I believe it was during COVID, it had a fence around the outside of it as well, and there was actually a lot of space in the corner as well. So I suppose, I know you can't give us the answer tonight, but just thinking back to that, removing the fence and, you can just cordon it off with traffic cones, it seems to me that the available space there will be a lot larger without having the fence there as well.
Through your worship, I'd be hopeful that we could fit it in, and we would do all we could to, if the Civic Centre is the chosen site by council, we would look to maximise it with all the pieces of equipment.
You also have to realise that's the only site that has cars driving in and out and through it. And in terms of the safety of the children, cones would not be sufficient.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, the question is not about children's safety. It's essentially the space was constrained because it was essentially became a COVID playground. and they had to check in. So if you remove, you can still have protective barriers on some sides to stop cars coming in, but around the outside into the corner, there was more space there, from my recollection, that you could have a bigger space that was available previously, and we have different considerations than we do now.
Through your worship, yes, for the majority of what you just said. I will clarify though that it wasn't fenced due to COVID because of the COVID playground. It was fenced at the very start because it was there because it was interacting with the rest of the car park. So that was a natural way of closing it from the rest of the car park. But what our team will do is we will, as I said, look to maximise that space available. That doesn't impact on the car parks available to try and use all pieces of equipment.
So we come back to Councillor Jones's question. And the mover was?
No, I don't see a need for a variation.
You don't. So you were the mover, right. And seconder was Councillor Hubel? You're okay? His call, okay. All right, so therefore that one's gone. Now we can go back to Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, I'll speak very briefly. Look, I want to keep it moving. I think, I'm disappointed that there is no Kensington Park ward in the list. But I won't not support it because I think we have to keep this moving, and it would be very disappointing for us, not to get to a resolution this evening. I don't want it to go back into storage. I appreciate very much so what Councillor Turnbull is saying, but I think if we just roll with this and then look for other opportunities to make sure that it is shared across the ward, maybe once the heat dies down in the new year, we can certainly do that. But I think let's keep it rolling. It would be a real shame for this to be packed up into storage and for the kids to miss out on using it, because I know, I know there are a lot of families that really enjoy using this, and I think I don't think the Civic Centre is the best location for it, but I do think the parks where there are complementary facilities for people to go down and scoot, have a play on the playground, have a picnic, meet as a group of families is really where you get the most use out of it. So I think the other three sites are going to be fantastic for that, and I know a lot of young families around Belliot Reserve that will really make the most of this and enjoy it. But Councillor Cornish will be very happy to see it back in his ward. I would be disappointed it's not in our ward, but let's keep it moving.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Davey?
I just have a question in terms of, from my earlier points about Mellow Reserve and the consultation aspect, what consultation would be involved, or information would be involved in each of these sites to be provided to the locale? Can you remind me how we do that and what process we have? Thanks.
Through your worship, as we did with the previous 7 and over the last 2 years, as soon as council elects where these locations are going to be, we announce it on website, all social media, and all of our materials or paraphernalia, including the newsletters. And prior to each location, I believe it's 3 to 4 weeks before, we advise the local residents nearby and also the users of the park by putting notification up on the park.
Councillor Cornish.
A question of the administration, if I can, coming off from Councillor Hughes's comment. Would it be possible, given the Civic Centre has very limited ancillary items, to maybe put a bench or a picnic table nearby for parents to sit and watch? That would be great.
I was wondering about what they do with the toilet too when the library's not open. Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Worship, and Nina Marnie, I greet you all. Look, I was very happy to second this motion, although I don't really love it with all my heart. Look, but the perfect is the enemy of the good. I don't think the Civic Centre is great, but this gets it moving, and I think that's what's important. I am upset that Beaumont misses out. again, although Langman Reserve is a stone throw away, and I know there's a lot of Beaumont Morn families that'll be happy to see it back down south. It's also good. Rose Park Toorak Gardens getting a bite of the apple again. We have a very good asset. We have a very well used asset, and I do want to say that I find it frustrating that there's so much conversation revolving around tolerating this as opposed to embracing the opportunity to enjoy it. So I'll leave it there.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Then I shall go back to Councillor Davis.
What I'd like to encourage you to do is to just take a step back from the equitable position of this. If you actually have a look at the distribution of where the pump track is currently proposed on this list, it's actually a straight line across the middle of Burnside. Now, Mellor Reserve is right next to Kensington Park, and I'm quite sure it's not that far away. It's in that corner. So to say that the people of Councillor Hughes and Councillor Davies' ward are completely deprived of a wheel park and have been is not quite right, okay? The only other area over there is Haslam Oval. So in terms of equity, it's actually a very fair distribution. You've got Penfold Park, Belliot Reserve, which is up in the southeast, Burnside, which is down in the southwest. This is actually, in my view, quite a fair distribution of and use and sharing it around that city. These 4 locations are good. I think they'll work. And most importantly, I think we should also get away from this idea that troops have been rallied or that there's been an army that's come out. And I think people, what they're doing is they're advocating for their community. So Rochelle is an advocate for her community, and she's gone and discussed with mums and dads about people who are in favour of it. These things happen organically. I didn't go and, when I was talking about Kinsey Gardens Reserve, when we had this debate beforehand, and there were 60 people came out to a street corner meeting to yell and berate Councillor Piggott and I didn't get them all to come out and yell at me. All right, and Glennis, who's in the gallery, had some very stern words to say. I didn't rally the troops in favour or against it. It's simply what our community believes. And what they're mostly saying to you, and if you actually look at what they're saying, is that they are worried, and that's what, particularly in the Mellor Reserve area, is they're saying, we use these tennis courts on a regular basis, please put it somewhere else. And they might not say please, but still. It's not about them being fearful of a skate park. It's not about them being worried about vandalism, because it's just not true. All right? It's just not true for 12-year-old kids. What they're saying is we've currently got a facility, we use that facility a lot, please don't impinge upon it. And this council doesn't need to force something down their throats to prove a point. Because I think if you say to them, is this pump track going to cause a whole bunch of chaos and vandalism, they'll probably say no. What they're telling you is that please don't use these tennis courts. So I think we need to reset a little bit. It's not that they're afraid of a pump track, it's that they value what they have at present and they want to continue to use it. I hope that you can support these 4 points. I think it gets the job done. I think that they are good options for the city. It spreads it across the city, and I think that what we're doing is providing this community facility. That's what we're doing here, and this motion gets that done. Thank you.
I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? The motion was carried and the division's been called, so those who've supported it, please stand. Councillor Henschke, Cornish, Hughes, Davey, Piggott, Davis, Carbone and Hubble. Those against, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Dawes and Councillor Jones. Now we move to the second motion, which is Councillor Carbone, 8.2, report on motion on notice.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I am delighted and humbled to move this motion. It has been a long time coming and we are nearly there. In starting tonight's discussion, I thought I'd share a little story with everyone because it probably made it raw as anything. Do I have to read out the motion?
Is it necessary?
It's
Listed. No, it's not necessary to be read out.
So I thought I'd share a story, Your Worship, because it was a question that was asked of me, which I think summarised and crystallised exactly why I believe in this. And someone asked me, why do you care so much about this? And I had to think about it for a moment, and the answer was quite simple actually, because once upon a time, I, like everybody else in this chamber, was a child too. And I think about my childhood growing up in Burnside and what I used to do. And for me, it was growing up on a bike. That's what I did. When I went to see my friends, I got on my bike. When I went to school, I got on my bike. When I wanted time alone from my family and so forth, I got on my bike. That's how I grew up. And for me, riding around, unfortunately, over a period of time, got a little bit boring, so I wanted something a bit more adventurous. And I remember as a child begging my dad to take me to what was called the BMX track in the South Parklands. And some of my best childhood moments was going to the BMX track in the South Parklands and going around. It went up, it went down, it went from side to side. It was fun, it was thrilling. For me, that was a roller coaster. It was the best thing I had. So that's why I'm so passionate, because I know what children want, because I was there myself at one point in time. It has been a long, long conversation. Long and sad, long and frustrating, but we are almost there. We've been talking about it, we've done our homework, we've done our surveys, we've done our workshops, we've done our reports. And it is unquestionable that the children want a wheel park in Burnside. And what is virtually unquestionable as well, and that is the Kensington Gardens Reserve is the best we've got. Now, no location is perfect. There's always going to be pros and cons for every single location, every single park we have in Burnside. And if we stop and think, oh, I'm going to keep looking for that best spot, you're going to spend another 20 years looking, and you'll be back here with the same discussion. Kensington Gardens Reserve, whether you like it or not, is the best we've got. So I think we owe it to the children of Burnside, we owe it to our community, and we owe it to ourselves to put this matter to bed. Give it a try. Give it a try. Let's come up with a design, let's come up with a budget, and let's fine-tune our target market.
Finish, thank you. I seek a seconder. Councillor Jones, you wish to speak now or withhold? Councillor Davis.
Look, in our own individual lives, every time we take an action, we cast a vote for the person that we want to become. If we make a selfish choice, we cast a vote to become a selfish person. If we take a kind action, we cast a vote to be a kind person. Tonight, I think we cast our votes as to the type of council that we want to be. Do we want to be a council that unites, or do we want to be a council that divides? Now, whatever side of the debate you are on tonight, and I understand that people are on either sides, whether you believe that Kensington Gardens Reserve is the best place for a skate park, or if you don't, I think what we need to do is look at the position we are currently in and how best we can fill a vision for the City of Burnside Council. Right now, we have a community advocate, Rochelle, who was saying last week, I'm done, I'm over it, I don't want anything more to do with this. We have community members who are telling us that they're not being listened to, they're not being engaged, and they feel that a skate park will further impinge on their open space. And I have Councillor Carbone, who has on occasion slammed his hands on the table and has spoken in the past with frustration and anger. We all understand here that there is always going to be a small percentage of people who say no arbitrarily, no matter what they say no. I get that. But first of all, when we surveyed our population, it wasn't a small number of people who didn't want a skate park. It was 45% of them. And then if you ask them that next question, do you want a skate park near you? 67% of people in Burnside did not want a skate park to impact on their open and green space. People say that this is against the skate park, right? That they're voting against the skate park or because of this fear. That's not what they're voting about. That's not what they're giving you that view on. What they're saying is that they value their current open space in their local reserves. They value their current peace. They value what they have at the moment. And this is not just one or two grumpy people. There are people who want to keep their green space. Now, I believe that we as leaders of our community can come to a position where the vast majority of people agree. And I have run that process before. It is absolutely possible. We need to hold forums, we need to educate our community, and most importantly, ward councillors need to front up to their community and have that discussion one-on-one. And that's what needs to happen. And there's a significant amount of work that needs to happen. But this motion doesn't achieve that. What this motion does is divide it into people who want to look after our kids and then everyone else. And I don't think that's fair. It pits neighbour against neighbour, ward against ward, and councillor against councillor. We have a lot of work to do if we want to bring those two groups in our community together. But what we'll be remembered for is how we conduct that process and if we do the work to bring them together. Please don't support this motion. There is a much better way of getting this through our community.
Thank you. Seconder? I've already got the seconder, but he doesn't wish to speak. So who else wishes to speak then? Councillor Davis.
I have a couple of questions. I'm just interested in, because there's a whole lot of requirements for feasibility study. I've got no idea of costings for a whole feasibility study, the demographic issues, a concept design, and then a budget estimate for early 2022. Is that realistic, and what would those costings look like?
Through your worship, my understanding of the motion as it stands is that the feasibility study will come back to council that will provide information on the potential target demographic, include proposed concept designs, and it would also provide a lot of the information that was previously provided within the feasibility study that we did in Newland Park as a similarity. When we estimated the budget cost for undertaking a feasibility study with concept designs at an earlier stage, we estimated it to be about $15,000. In discussing, and you would do that with professional wheel park designers who have done it elsewhere, they would then assist with those proposed concept designs and the information that's been requested there, including providing a timeline for progression and a budget estimate for detailed design and construction. So I'm not able to answer part C until that feasibility study comes back to council. But to respond to your first part of the question, we could bring that back in early 2022, once subject to contractor availability, of course. It would be estimated to be about 6 weeks to undertake that work.
Said you had a subsequent question?
Yes, I'm not clear about what contractor staff and what of our staff resources would need to be used, and do we have the ability to, because I know we're pretty tight at the moment with our staff demands, do we have those resources available?
Through your worship, this is a larger body of work than the feasibility study we initially did at Newland Reserve. However, we do have staff that will be involved in undertaking a similar process, but we will need to engage professional contractors to assist with the additional work that's being requested by council.
I'd like to just ask a question before I hand over to you. During the Newland Park potential feasibility study and this one, I have received, as many others here have had, a number of emails concerned and not understanding the process or understanding the consultation that is required for any outcome to come out of this. And there's an assumption amongst some that this means we're going to build it in Kensington Gardens. So I would really like that explanation if Mr. Cant could give it, so those who are listening at home understand the process, that this is not, if it went up. This is not determining that this is where the park will go. Excuse me, I've asked the question. And that's quite a legitimate question. I'm getting the governance nodding.
Through your worship, what council is requesting is for a feasibility study to be done along with a concept design for Kensington Gardens Reserve. If council endorses in line with the motion as written, as I just responded, we will then engage a professional contractor to assist the administration in delivering that motion. That would mean then that the feasibility study and the potential concept design and the information requested in Part C to C of the motion would then be presented back to council for further consideration. At that point, council can decide to progress to community consultation. They can decide to stop work on it completely, or they can decide to look at another location, or combination of all of the above. If council then at that stage proceeded to community consultation, the results of that community consultation would come back, and then council would have once again have the opportunity whether it proceeds to detailed design and then construction and including into the budget. If it then includes in the budget, then it would be obviously subject to consultation as part of the annual business plan budget process.
I just wanted people to be clear on the, because there are a lot of people out there who are misinformed or uninformed, and they need to know what the process is. Lemon.
Thank you. You preempted my question to a degree with this, but I think it reinforces the fact that a feasibility study will not, big capital letters, not look at the local community. In terms of feasibility, you're not asking the neighbours what they think.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Henschke.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So, this sounds amazing that we can do a feasibility study and concept design for $5,000. That's incredible for a project which a total investment cost
through your
of...
worship, to clarify, sorry, I said 15,000.
15, yeah, even 15,000. I'm wondering, and the question is, what is the forecast total investment cost of this project? Because when you start a project, when you decide to start a project, you need to know plus or minus 100% what is this project cost going to be. Is it $1 million project plus or minus? You know, or is it going to be a $2 million project? We need to know now what we're getting into.
Through your worship, the council motion requests that information to be brought back to you to give you the better understanding before you proceed. We have provided figures previously up to $1 million, and we've quoted other wheel parks that have been built elsewhere that range from 300,000 up to over $1 million. But we won't know a cost until we have a proposed concept design, and we'll know what the elements of this wheel park include, and then it will be subject to the market. That will dictate what the cost of that project will be.
And then whatever location, that once we've got that costing, it could be the actual physical design could be adapted to fit the appropriate location that is chosen by consultation and by our decision and by budget process.
Absolutely.
Councillor Turnbull, you are next.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not intend to support this motion, but I would like it known that I've always been in favour of a wheel park, recognising the need for a sporting venue which caters for our youth which don't like organised sport. The reason I will not support this motion is that it once again identifies one location. A motion before for a feasibility study. A previous motion identified Newland Reserve. We then voted on November the 9th to put all sites back on the table, review all the potential sites with the purpose of developing a shortlist of the more appropriate ones for more detailed analysis. At the workshop, we all wrote down the top three. Until this work's done, it seems premature to invest time and money into another feasibility study of just one site. I also support the notion of an independent study with the 4 or 5 locations deemed suitable by council as a whole. Money paid for an independent consultant would be well spent, seeing that this is such a contentious issue. Surely it's best to compare all the sites together rather than just one at a time, as we're doing, as to the whims of various councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Cornick.
I think Councillor Turnbull just stole half of my words.
What whims?
I was going to pretty much... Oh, your microphone's still on, Councillor Turnbull. I was pretty much going to say that that probably would be the better option to actually undertake this, would be a budget bid with multiple locations, and we get the feasibility and concept plans for multiple locations where this could possibly go, and then we go out to the community, which would be probably a really good way of handling it. Although this is going to be one of the reserves that get done, so I'm actually going to support this motion as it is, because we can still do the other ones at a later stage. So, and I really think we need to kick this can, keep on kicking it down the road. We've done one park, we've got the feasibility for that, and we said it's not feasible. This is the next, this is another one. I kind of agree that it would be better if we did a lot at the same time, economies of scale, and then we can go out to the community with a broad range of different concepts and locales and say which one's the best. But I will vote for this just to keep, you know, we'll get the answers to some of the questions that we keep getting about this, because that's what a feasibility study does. It gives you the answers. And we're getting a lot of questions about where would it go, how much would it cost, and we don't know any of that stuff until we do this feasibility. So I'm happy to support this to at least answer those queries from those residents.
Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, I do feel like Councillor Hubel's last motion. This is not the perfect motion, and it's one I'm not happy with for the reasons that both Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Cornish just said. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Davis's words, but Councillor Davis, I don't want to wait another 10 years, and I feel like we have to move this forward. I really do. But the point I want to make very strongly, I made it at the workshop, I believe an independent analysis is needed. Now, residents on both sides of the argument and those who sit on the fence would expect such an outcome for such a contentious matter. They would want an independent analysis done, and then we can pick it to pieces from there on. So I will reluctantly support the motion to move it forward, as Councillor Cornish has said. But there are other sites, because I want a comparison. So let's do the first one, and it won't necessarily be at Kinsey Gardens Reserve, but it sets the standard for us to look at others. And they don't necessarily have to be in reserves. Now, these were some of the words that were said to us a week ago by the residents, and I wrote them down as they were talking from both sides, not just for or those against. We need to do it properly was one statement. We need to do it right was another statement. Use professional advisors was a third statement, and the last one was undertake due diligence. So based on that fact, I will support, but understanding that it hopefully will lead us down the pathway of choosing the best location. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, look, I wrote a page of stuff as to why Kinsey Gardens Reserve is not the right place. It's basically around how much it's being asked to do right now. I listed all the clubs down, the wetlands that's about to become quite a feature, etc. And I think that's a strong and valid argument. However, I sort of feel I'd like to pick up on the words of Councillor Dawes and Councillor Cornish, because I agree with them in that we do need to keep this going. At the moment, what we're doing is picking a reserve, doing a feasibility study, incurring the wrath, knocking it out. I suspect that's probably what will happen with Kinsey Gardens Reserve as well, which ultimately gets what our residents sort of feel, or most of them sort of feel should happen. It's not the right way to go. We did a workshop fortnight ago, it's not that long ago. There were a few things that come out of that. One was that there was four players one of which is Kensington Gardens Reserve, that had risen to the top after all of this had happened, with administration were sitting with. The other thing that came out was that we all sort of saw different things in terms of what this park would be, how big it would be, what sort of equipment it would be, who it would cover off. Would it cover off preschoolers, adults, in between, all that sort of stuff? We saw wheel parks that had actually incorporated green and open space in amongst it. So I sort of feel that we as a council should do that first before we put a finger on a location. I think we've got to go back and actually knock out. We had some good analysis at the start, but it was all very general in terms of that. I feel we should actually work out what this thing's going to be. What is it likely to look like? How big is it? Do we want to fence around it overnight? That sort of thing we need to do first. So what I propose as a way of making this forward is to vote this down, and we actually bring another motion actually back to January, where it actually does try and clarify some of those issues. The other thing I'm proposing is that I feel we should, or most of us should, get on a bus and go around and see some of these things. And I'm happy to hire the bus and drive the bloody thing in January in order for actually go around as a group and look at some of these things, because I think we need to answer that question first. Because if I do need to talk my residents into it, I'd like to know what they are going to get. And I think taking one park at a time with this sort of, a wheel park without more detail on it, I think is always going to fail. So, in a way, a feasibility study, I feel, under the current arrangement, will fail to get one in there. I think what we need to do is work out exactly what this thing looks like before we start upsetting various sets of residents. Let's upset the ones that really fit what we want and convince them that it's a good thing to do. So that's my proposal. Vote this down and come back in January and keep it going. I'm all for it.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I had a question. In relation to Ridge Park, and I know this was mentioned in the workshop, but I can't remember the outcome. We actually made an investment in a skate park in partnership with Unley Council. Have we got any redress and any skin still in that skate
Can I
park?
answer that question? Unley Council have no intention of doing anything with Burnside. They are undertaking to revamp their own because they know it's not useful and they're going to do it themselves.
So Ridge Park is being redeveloped. My query is
Michael
about...
Hewitson told me that's what's happening. He's the mayor.
My query is about Ridge Park, and thank you for that. But we actually made a financial investment, and I just wondered where we're at with that in terms of, did we get anything back? Do we still have a live investment? What's the situation in terms of Ridge Park, which, as I understand it, was for the Burnside community as well?
Through your worship, you're certainly straining my memory. It's been a while since I've looked at that. I remember we did look at the details behind that right at the very start when we first started looking at this process. If I recall correctly, it was approximately 20 years ago, the council invested roughly $15,000, please don't hold me to that exact figure, towards the creation of a skate park in the Unley Council area. Because it's in another council area, there is no capital owned by the City of Burnside. It was merely a contribution towards it, acknowledging the fact that that park would have been available for all members of the community, including Burnside residents.
Councillor Davis.
The motion, so in order to do a concept design in 2B, you're going to spend that money, you as the administration need to know what age group it's pitched at. So the concept design of a skate park for 12-year-olds is very different from 0 to 35. How is the administration going to choose which demographic it makes that it targets for.
Through
Microphone, please.
Through your worship, as I mentioned earlier on, the best way for us to do that is to work with and engage professional contractors who do this and have done it throughout the country. We would work with them to determine potential locations within council's selected reserve, look at the options that are available for each of those locations, there may be more than one within a reserve, and come up with high-level concept designs at that stage as to how and what would be included as part of that design for council to consider further. As part of that, you would have to have a reasonably flexible design that would allow for a wide demographic, but as we have said throughout this, we are aiming it at the youth market. That's what we have been talking about with this council, and that would be the demographic that we would probably put back to council as the best recommendation.
Subsequent question?
Youth means under 30, and up until recently I was youth. So what the administration is saying, that the way that you interpret this motion is that when you instruct a design team or a contractor, you'll be aiming the skate park or pitching it from 0 to 30. Or are you going to give us multiple concept designs, so maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 drawings, which are tailored towards Kinsey Gardens Reserve in this position? How many concept designs are you going to bring back?
Through your worship, that would be best determined once we engage the professional contractor. However, the motion as it stands says bring back a proposed concept design. So one is technically what you will be getting. However, if we can get good value for money when we engage a contractor and we can come up with more than one, that provides different options for council to consider, we would definitely aim to do it. But to answer your direct question, a minimum of one.
Can I just ask a question before I then come back to you, because you've had two? I understand that in designing, there are certain components that make up a wheel park that would be desirable, and that I don't agree with Councillor Davis, who wanted to put it in different places last time, but from the perspective of if a designer or professional comes up with, let's say, 5 selected items, there should be sufficient flexibility depending on the site for those 5 items to be placed in an appropriate manner that it would suit the environment. Am I right?
Yes, through your worship, yes, that's correct. The most important part of this would be twofold. It's how it fits into the park and how it looks within the reserve, absolutely, and whether it's appropriate for the landscape. And 2, a well-designed flexible wheel park does accommodate for 5 to older. The problem with the Ridge Park wheel park was that it was designed for just the very elite or the older, and it eliminated the younger residents. That was what we kept hearing when we got the feedback. So ideally, we would be able to present you with a concept design with elements that not only suit the landscape, but also are suitable for 5 to 30.
Now, Councillor Davis.
I suppose that answers it, but to clarify, the administration won't choose the demographic that the wheel park is targeted for. You're going to place that in the hands of the consultant.
Through your worship, we will undertake a feasibility study that recommends a target demographic, and that will also include through discussions with that professional contractor, and we will bring that back to council for consideration.
Okay, and follow-up question.
I think we've also had, at the last council meeting, some from the 3 speakers who were for a wheel park. They did indicate, all 3 of them, that the age group that they were looking at was between 5 and 16.
Yeah, but that,
Now, I'm only...
but it's not going to inform the consultant. Can I ask my follow-up
I'm just
question?
stating a comment that was made by those who are going to use it.
Yeah.
Now, you can ask it.
So my question, and I want to be specific on this point then, from what you're saying, is that the administration will decide through their feasibility study what the target demographic will be, and it could be 0 to 30, or it could be 5 to 10, but the administration will choose what that demographic target is and then bring back a concept design based off of that target demographic.
Through your worship, the resolution instructs us to go away and develop a feasibility study that includes discussion on the target demographic for a wheel park in the city of Burnside, a proposed concept design for the wheel park which should suit that target demographic. That's if council endorses that motion as it stands, that's the instruction.
Councillor Hughes.
No, I was just going to follow up on that question because I just wanted to clarify my interpretation of reading that as well. It's a discussion on the demographic. So it could include, you could look at this and you might get this, or you could include this and you might get this. That would be a discussion, is that correct?
Through your worship, that's correct, yes. We will bring back a concept design that is suitable enough for a wide range of demographics as possible, but that discussion will be included in that. The reason we will go to professional contractors is because we don't have people on staff that are experienced at doing this. So that's why we would need to engage contractors.
And none of that will happen if there's no feasibility study. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Henschke. And then Councillor Piggott.
A question through the Mayor for the administration. Will we be receiving a completed concept design in early 2022?
Under this motion, yes, it could, but if this motion is lost, it will not.
Yeah. So my question is, if this motion is carried, will we receive a completed concept design that we can then gate to detailed design? Or will we be needing to approve funds for more concept design work?
Through your worship, that will come down to council's decision making at the time. If council is presented with a concept design that they are comfortable with and wish to proceed to community consultation and detailed design, then no, you would not need to do more concept designs. If council is not comfortable with the concept design, then it may very well need to.
Councillor Piggott.
In regard to the target demographic, does the location potentially limit the demographic? Does it? Like does it inform the target demographic? Do you feel or the concept of actually working out what the target demographic is, what that equipment then would be, and how big it might be? Does that need to have a spot on a map to design into in the first place? Do you think?
Through your worship, I think we've talked about the ideal demographic that we would like to cater for as part of this. And ideally, the design that you accommodate, well, we've talked about 5 to 30. 5 to 30. Yeah, so we've talked about 5. And I only used 30 because I used the word youth earlier on. And I was originally imagining older teenagers, 5 to older teenagers, but older teenagers would be the ideal demographic. That's who we were. Yeah, that's a fair point. What you can then include in a particular location will depend on the space available and also the landscape that you are working with as well. So, for example, can you manage with a bowl, or is it just going to be a pump track type of facility? So that's what will come down to the actual landscape and the location and space available that will take in that.
Subsequent question?
And so, what in Kensington Gardens, you mentioned the bowl,
I understand the area bit, you know, you're needing the area, but assuming there will be a minimum area we're going to need wherever we put this. The bowl, what's going to be special in one park versus another in regard to whether you can put a bowl in or whether you can't? It strikes me, sorry, I should let you answer, but I guess my view is that everything you're saying actually doesn't need which park it is, there's going to be a park. Is that fair to say?
Yes, if you had a certain square meterage footprint that you were to work with. But in Kensington Gardens itself, you could have some areas that you could potentially put up to 100 square metres, and you could have some that are only half that size, for example.
I would love to give you a list of about 5 skate parks without going by bus, and you independently, all of you who are interested, go and actually have a look at the size and the capacity of each of them. There's some that are small parks, those that are bigger parks, some, you know, some as far as Strathalbyn and others not in Unley, in next suburb over. There's a number of Clarence Gardens, there's a number of really good ones locally that would not take, if you've got a weekend free or a day free in a weekend in the school holidays or in the holidays break, please go and just have a look at them.
I'm disappointed you're not taking me up on the offer for the bus ride.
No, I'm not taking you up on the bus because I've seen them all.
I'm glad
and
you,
I've spent
I'm glad
a lot
you
of
agree
time
with the
with all of
sentiment
them,
that we perhaps should do it before we pick
but I think
anywhere to put it.
But I think we've had 3 years to do that, and that's what I've done over the last 3
Your
years.
Worship, come on.
Councillor Davey.
I have a question. I've got a question.
No, you always interrupt.
From my memories of the recent workshop we held, it was inconclusive about where we would put a wheel park or a skate park. And so I'm shocked that we've got this motion before us tonight. But what sort of space in Burnside are we looking at for a wheel park facility? I mean, I've got no idea in terms of, are we looking at a Mellor Reserve or a Langman Reserve or Penfold Park, or are we looking at one of our bigger parks? Or do we need to buy some space?
Through your worship, as part of the workshop following the council motion that says review the 2019 desktop analysis, we updated that in 2021, and we came up with 4 that we believed were most suitable, and then another 8 that were semi-suitable. So the 4 that were suitable, if you recall, were the Glenside Basin Reserve, Kensington Gardens Reserve, Kensington Park Reserve, and Penfold Park. The semi-suitable included Civic Centre, Hazelwood Park, JB Ware, Langman, etc. In terms of an ideal size, what we've said for most ideal is that if there's a space within one of those reserves, if there's 1,000 square metres available, then that's what we've said is most ideal. So that's why we've identified those 4 as the most suitable.
Councillor Hughes. Sorry, Councillor Lemon.
I have a question too. Getting back to that workshop that we held, one of the things that you asked us to do was fill out a form, and I remember filling out the form and handing it back. The other thing you asked is, as individuals participating in that workshop, was, do you want a wheel park in Burnside? And I think I'm the only one that actually answered that question on the night. Can you tell me if you've got any indication from the bits and bobs that came back to you about what the rest of this chamber, where the rest of this chamber is thinking?
Through the Mayor, approximately half of the requested councillors filled in the survey. We haven't actually compiled all of the results of that at the moment, so we haven't got that. but on the face of it, about 50% were in favour of having a wheel park.
Councillor Hughes, did you indicate you wanted to ask a question?
It's just to clarify, perhaps, are we allowed to make decisions at workshops, and would that be perhaps why the information was not included in the report? If the staff could just clarify, that's why we didn't have an outcome from a workshop.
That is correct. You're not allowed to make decisions at a workshop.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak or ask any further questions? Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you everyone for the debate, and thank you everyone also for coming to this meeting. I was one of the people that called this, and if I have taken any of you away this evening from preparation of meals on Friday and Saturday, I do apologise, and thank you again. This is a really important issue, judging by the plethora of feedback we've gotten from residents, and it's something that deserves to be dealt with before the break, one way or the other. Look, the four top performers on that desktop study came through, and look, Kensington Gardens Reserve, I like visuals. It was green all the way across. It ticked all the boxes. And I like the idea of, shooting for the moon. We've gotten concerns from residents, very valid, very real concerns, but with absolute respect to all of them, they don't know what they're against because we don't know what we're proposing. It's a very high-level, blue sky idea. What we need to do is to respect these residents. We've heard them. We owe it to them to look at this location. We have staff, and their job is to do this sort of thing. They have told us, these are the top four, and of those top four, Kensington Gardens Reserve is the best. Now, I don't know that. The staff don't 100% know it, which is why we're getting experts in. So we owe it to our residents to look into this carefully. And so we can show the community what it is exactly we are proposing, and the concept design will do that. We had a deputation, I wrote some quotes down too, Councillor Dawes. It was Mr Salagaris who said, please be careful. And I intend on being careful. I'm not choosing tonight, I will vote for this motion, but I'm not choosing to put this facility, whatever it may be, in Kensington Gardens Reserve. I'm saying, from what we know, this is the spot. All signs point to this being the spot for the time being. Let's get the microscope out. I don't think there is a better way. I think this is the right way. We'll get a concept, use experts, get a budget estimate, look at the timeline, plan the consultation, all there in the motion. Ask residents, when we consult with them, a meaningful question. This is a step. Let's take it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Yes, my memories of the workshop are that we were workshopping this issue, as outlined by the acting CEO quite well. I'm shocked that we've got this motion before us. I do not think we need to be making this decision at this time, 3 days before Christmas. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I don't see the urgency. I think there are so many factors about a wheel park, a skate park, or whatever it is in Burnside that we need to consider. And Kensington Gardens Reserve is definitely not the place to even do a feasibility study on. I can't support this. When we talk about what residents want, at our last meeting a week ago, we had 3 residents, I think they're residents, who were for the location in Kensington Gardens Reserve. 5 were definitely against. And we've had a whole lot of emails and submissions along those lines. They're not the only issues to do with the skate park in Kensington Gardens Reserve, but there are significant mob of residents who are opposed to a skate park facility in Kensington Gardens Reserve. And that's what we're considering tonight. I think Kensington Gardens Reserve is absolutely oversubscribed. It is in the process of being developed with fabulous wetlands, and I think it's at risk of being overdeveloped and over-engineered. I don't think it could take one more piece of construction within the reserve, and there certainly wouldn't be any more that I would support. We do have to look at our environmental responsibilities and get back to actually considering those. And I think one of the challenges for a skate park is it's a big lump of concrete, and it's going to take away from what's left of our green environmental parks and reserves. So I'd need a lot of convincing that we need to remove some green in our depleted environment already to put in a skate park. So I don't think a feasibility study at this stage is valid or worthwhile.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Hughes?
I'll speak in support of the motion, and Councillor Davey has said we don't know what the residents want, and what the residents want, sorry, and she spoke about the 5 to 3 deputations, and we actually can't just purely vote tonight on deputations that we've heard, because that's actually not, it's actually not consultation. So what we need is similar. We need to go out and have an idea, right? To then be able to go and ask people, what do you think of this? Because if I go out and say, what do you think of a red pair of shoes? Councillor Hibbs is going to go, they look awful. But if I show you a picture of what those red pair of shoes might look like, they might be bang on. It's similar to what we did with Tusmore. Once we had some ideas, and you remember this because it came back to the chamber, the staff went away and came up with 3 ideas, and we voted on that to present to the community, to consult on. And the community actually came back with issues. And what did we do? As an elected body, we went through, I think Councillor Cornish can take the credit for his crafty motion, and we addressed one by one all of those issues. But until we present something for people to comment on, all we are doing is throwing around an idea. And we will throw the idea around for another 9 months, however long we've got left. Not very long. So I will support it. I don't think we're ever going to come up with the perfect motion, but I think it's no different to what we did at Newland Park. We went out, got some information, and that was presented back to us. Now, if the staff go out and do this feasibility, I'm sure if they get to the end of that and think, you know what, we actually can't even physically fit anything in here based on what we've got, they'll bring that back to us. I have confidence that our staff will do that without going and wasting money to present something that wouldn't be feasible. That's why it's called the feasibility study. So I know this will cause division within the community. Councillor Davis has mentioned that. But I think we've already had this discussion. That will happen at any site. So what we need to do is take that list that the staff have gone and done an assessment and have invested a lot of time and effort and money in. That ranked and gave us the top 4. And as Councillor Hubel said, this showed up green. So let's start there. Let's start somewhere. Because at the end of the day, we can keep workshopping as long as we like, but we don't have anything on the table to actually continue and move forward with, and that's why I will support this.
Councillor Lemon?
Thank you. I won't support this, and I want to make it very clear to everyone what you're supporting. Have a look at C. You're not supporting a concept design that you're going to go out and have a look at. Have a look at C. Progression, including community consultation. Yes, well, it doesn't stop there, does it? Because this particular motion then says detailed design and construction. So what you're looking at in this motion isn't let's go out and get a pretty drawing of what we might have and then we'll go and ask people. This motion says Kensington Gardens Reserve will be it. And for that reason, I will not support it.
Councillor Henry.
No, I want to speak to the motion, please. No, I totally agree with Councillor Lemon. It's a confusing and motion. I don't get it, and I'm worried about it, and I don't think we should vote for this. And going right back to the beginning of what the problem is, what is the problem? It's our youth. What sort of problem? It's the age group we talked about in our workshop, up to the 14-year-olds. That's the problem. We're now talking about, it could be up to 35-year-olds that this is an investment for. Well, what are we doing? What is the problem? We're losing sight of what the problem is. Can we find a solution for the problem in different ways, in different offerings? Maybe it's not a skate park. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a skate park or a small pump track, a permanent pump track somewhere. I think we have to be very, very careful. We don't get carried away with the idea of a skate park proper. We have to think of what the problem is and try and find the solution. We've asked our community in the annual surveys about skate parks. It wasn't a burning desire for one, was it? So, and we've heard tonight from Councillor Davey, our parks are there, as it says in our website. Burnside Park, safe and relaxing surrounds. Why not pay a visit? Maybe it just doesn't fit in the city of Burnside. Maybe this city hasn't got the right spot for a proper wheel park. And let's stop spending money for reports that are going to sit on shelves. And let's not spend time upsetting residents just before Christmas. And every council meeting this topic has come up.
Councillor Pickett. Councillor Hubel.
Clarification for the administration. For 2C, now I teach Year 4 writing, and my interpretation of this sentence is that the subordinate clause is including community consultation, detailed design and construction, and that relates to the timeline for progression. So my reading of C, number 2C, is that administration is being asked for a budget estimate, and another thing it's being asked for is a timeline for progression, which includes community consultation, detailed design and construction. Could I get a response about how 2C is being interpreted?
Through your worship, because of the point number 2 that says that the feasibility study includes discussion on, I interpret it that council would request us to provide that information to enable them to make further discussions. So it would be provide a budget estimate and a timeline for progression, and I would interpret it as if council choose to proceed, that would then include community consultation, detailed design and construction.
So a follow-up, if I may, your worship, just to really labour this point. Is this motion asking for a detailed design to be made?
No, the feasibility study and concept design will be brought back to council for the next decision, and that's all that we brought back.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? No one else wishes to speak? I would like to just make a couple of comments. KGR was given to Burnside to be a public recreation park, and the definition of recreation has changed. I agree there's a lot happening there, but this motion doesn't say we will build it there. This motion is asking us to consider a feasibility study of the likelihood or whether or not it could be placed there or not. Having a feasibility study doesn't automatically determine this is where it will be built, but it starts a conversation, and it starts a conversation with a wider community. It will allow a demonstration of flexibility of design, costing, and some of you have already said that. How it might fit into a particular environment, which is really important. It's an example of how it might fit. And many of the ones I've seen have fitted into the environment really cleverly in terms of their design. And it will come back for council for further consideration. And if approved, go out to full public consultation so everybody gets a say. Just please consider everybody in the broader population of Burnside. It is similar to the 60s when the pool was proposed for Hazelwood Park. And I remember it really well. Oh yes, it is. And decisions were made and there was great conflict within the community over the location. No, I'm not. Excuse me, I'm allowed to say what I wish, what I'm allowed to say. I'm not trying to tell you which way to vote. I'm just providing some information. And excuse me, I'm allowed to. No, I'm not. I'm giving my point of view. I'm an elected member just the same as all of you sitting around the table. I have every right to speak on a matter as I wish. I am not trying to convince you one way or the other. No, I'm not. Well, it's all on recording, so I will actually get a legal opinion on this because my friend mayors all tell me okay, don't worry, doesn't matter. I will now pass it over to Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's worth maybe just congratulating this council that we have come so far on this issue. I get that it's emotional, I get that it's controversial, I get that it's probably just a little bit too hard sometimes. But we have gone much further than any other council in the last 20 years. I've been around the block a few times on this issue, so I know what I'm talking about. And we have done a lot of work, and that is to be recognised. There's been a lot of very detailed discussion tonight, but I think sometimes we miss the bigger picture. This motion specifically deals with assessing demand. It talks about location and it answers those last lingering questions. And for some reason, no matter how many times it's come up on agenda, there's still more and more and more questions. So I think this feasibility study will answer those last dying questions that seems to be hanging around this council like a bad smell. It talks about cost, it talks about what it's going to look like and so forth. So we can finally put to bed some of those lingering unknowns. Now, demand, how many petitions have we received? How many have we received? The last one was 600 alone, and yet we're still questioning demand. If 600 isn't enough, then please tell me, please tell them what magic number you would like for them to put any burning issue that there isn't a demand for this. Location. You have to admit that the racing favourite is KGR because of the studies that the staff have done. Yes, of course, it might not be perfect. Maybe it won't. But you have to admit that it more than likely is. The report, the feasibility study, will talk about consumer market and how it's going to look and feel. And of course, we want it to look like Burnside. I don't want a concrete jungle either. I don't want any of that. So this will put to bed all those issues. And I think Councillor Dawes said a few meetings ago, you know, the best way to get consumers or residents over the line is don't tell them, show them. And I like the red shoe analogy. It can relate to all of us. What do you think about this? I don't know. But if you show them, same with Burnside Village, if you show people what it's going to look like, they can actually see it and it puts any unknown, any fear to bed. And this, of course, will lead to full-scale community consultation. I get that there are some residents who are up in arms because they just don't know what's going on. People always react on fear. But we will eventually come up with a design, if it works for KGR, and show the residents. That is community consultation. Let's do it for the children. I'm going to do it for the child that I once used to be, and I'd like you to do it for the child that you used to be once upon a time.
That's the end. You've had the time. Put the motion to the chamber. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? So it's 6 each, and I have the casting vote. And I do believe that we need a feasibility study, and I do not believe this motion actually... Well, let me finish first.
We're just voting. We're just voting.
I haven't given my opinion yet. I haven't given my vote one way or the other.
We did this before at the last council meeting where the division called it was 6-6. We went to vote first, and then you get to speak. So you
All
can
right.
speak twice.
We can't have division because we haven't had the results of the first vote yet.
Yeah, but the division's been called regardless.
I still get to vote, and then the division is called, and then people may change. Thank you.
Through the
Funny, I
mayor,
thought I was an elected member who's allowed to
through the
speak.
mayor, the mayor is allowed to, when she's making her casting vote, give an explanation as to why. So she's allowed to do that.
My comment is that I do believe a feasibility study we need, and it is not a guarantee that this is going to go into that park, but we need to have the red shoes. We need to know what it's likely to cost. And then if it doesn't go into that park, we need to have a design that is flexible enough to be able to alter and change till eventually one day we might actually even find a place that is suitable. So my vote is with the motion. Being called, so all those please stand. Right, Councillor Cornish, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Dawes, Councillor Jones, Councillor Hubel and Mayor Monceau. Those against, Councillor Henschke, Councillor Davey, Councillor Piggott, Councillor Davis, Councillor Lemon and Councillor Turnbull. And the motion was carried. Now, we're not allowed to have any other further discussion at this meeting tonight, so I declare the meeting over. And thank you for your attendance and wish you all a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year.